Hello and welcome to My Southern Exposure, episode number 9, July 19th, 2020. And I want to first start off by thanking our over 32,000 viewers in the last 8 weeks. I never anticipated that, but I'm extremely excited. And that's in 3 different markets, Florida, California, and also Ohio. So we are open to have more viewers in any market that there are interested in listening to us. A little quick update for me, still working on the house projects, gardening, finishing off the dining room. And this morning I'll share a little story that caught me off guard. We just redid the curfew for 11 o'clock last night. And unfortunately, a dear friend of mine who was at my partner's birthday party a couple weeks ago, who is a manager of a local gas station. Some people vandalized the store, broke through, smashed the front door, and also took cell phones, the cash register. And unfortunately, it happened around like 3 o'clock in the morning. So the cops were unfortunately not out, but they were there this morning. And my friend text messaged me, so I had to go help fix the door for her and secure the actual location. So that's pretty much my update for the week. And we also have had our very first week of over 6,000 views in 1 week. So kudos to both Rajee and Mick. I do want to say, if you want to get a hold of me, you can. The email address is joseph@mysouthernexposure.site. That's joseph@mysouthernexposure.site. And Rajee, what's going on in your neighborhood?
Well, hello. It sounds like you've been a busy little beaver. I think we all have it our own way. Hey, shout out to all our viewers. This is wonderful. It continues to grow, and I want to thank everyone for tuning in and hearing what we have to say. This is great. I'm excited because it seems like every week it grows and grows. And one day we'll be giving shout outs to people in England and Uganda and Zimbabwe and Australia and India, right? it's because we're global. We're global. So let's see. What can I say? This week, I'm really happy about some great news in regards to Breathe Black and what the authorities have decided to do. So I'll update you all later in the show. And also, we were given homework by Mr. Joseph. And my topic this week is going to be about the whole Nick Cannon scandal. And for those of you all who don't know who Nick Cannon is, I mean, I doubt there's very many people that don't know who he is, but he's an entertainer. He's been in the industry for eons because he started as a teenager. He's the ex-husband of Mariah Carey and the father of the twins. So I'm going to go into detail about what happened, and also we're going to connect that to the whole cancel culture that we're living in now, where, one day someone can have a career and then they make a mistake and say something that maybe rubs people the wrong way, or it's interpreted the wrong way, or maybe they actually meant what they said, and the next day they're canceled. So, Mickey, tell me what's going on with you, honey.
Thanks for that, Rajee. I'm trying to think of what is new with me, because the weeks really do tend to blend together, and it's hard to keep up with just trying to remember how things are. I feel like I need to start journaling, or just maybe, even if it's not journaling, just maybe taking more of a documented approach to my day, where it's like, what did I accomplish today? What did I learn today? What did I consume today? Not just food, but media. I kind of lose track. I'm trying to think. I've started doing a little bit more community organizing work and working with what's the term? Groups basically in the area. They're organized horizontally, so there's not really a huge hierarchy in them. But there is a tenants union out here in Los Angeles that I've I mean, I was saying last weekend how I went out and did some canvassing for them. And then this weekend, or well, not this weekend, but this week, I've started trying to hopefully do a little bit more with them. But that, like, I haven't really officially started with them just yet, but that's something that I'm sort of looking forward to. I feel like it'll be a good use of my time. And then I'm also helping out with this prison abolition group. They're called Power Blossoms, which is a great name. And they connect LGBTQ prisoners with LGBTQ volunteers and activists on the outside. They set up pen pal relationships. They send care packages. We just kind of basically offer our like voices and like our companionship and our like writing services to people who are currently incarcerated who happen to be LGBTQ. So that's been really cool, and I've been working with them for about a month now, and that's been really just like a nice way to like spend, like, we do mail sorting on Thursday evenings. So it's kind of like this, where it's like it's a nice excuse to also just like get together with people and like hear how people are doing and feel like, you know, things are kind of getting done. So those are probably my two biggest developments of the week. And obviously I'll also have a little bit to tell you guys about my own specific topic. As you guys know, there has been a lot of talk and discussion and a lot of fear that the unemployment benefits and government support is going to be coming to an end very soon. So one thing that also does affect, in addition to people like service workers and other people who, like, for one reason or another can't go back to their specific job, this also affects independent live venues. But I'll explain that a little bit more in a little bit of detail. And if you have any questions for me, you can reach me at mick@mysouthernexposure.site. But now I'm going to toss it over to Joseph, who has a little bit more information for all of you viewers who have tuned in. Joseph?
Thank you so much, Mick. Thank you so much, Rajee. If you want to get a hold of Rajee, don't forget, like she did, that's Rajee, R-A-J-E-E. Go ahead.
SouthernExposure.site.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to give, Raj, R-A-J-E-E at mysouthernexposure.site. That's that beautiful Raven mistress sitting over there in the corner. So, but I do want to give a little bit of a tease, but not too much of one. It's not really a tease. It's more of kind of the darker side of things, but it's something that we all need to be aware of and we all need to take action with. So I'm going to make it really short and sweet. Unfortunately, all three of us are on the top 16 for positive cases and deaths with COVID, with the numbers. So unfortunately, Rajee and I are in Florida. We are in number 3. California is actually number 2, only usurped by New York. Unfortunately for Mick and myself, we have family members and friends up in Ohio, and they are creeping up slowly to number 16. So based off of the numbers, it doesn't look very good. I'm going to give you guys all an update and later in the show to talk about some of those numbers and how things are affecting everybody in the world, not just locally. And I'll give you my 2 cents worth. But now over to Rajee to give her official introduction of her show topic, because she had some homework to do.
I sure did. Okay, so, you know, earlier this week, Nick Cannon, who, like I said earlier, was or is an entertainer in the industry. I don't know. Maybe the word is was, because, like I said, with cancel culture, you just never know. But Nick is all over the place. He has he actually used to host America's Got Talent, and now he's the host of The Masked Singer. He has a show on cable called Wilding Out, and also he has his own YouTube channel, and the show is called Cannon's Class. So that's where he talks about like some, you know, like deep stuff, things going on in the world, and I would say controversial topics. So this past week, he had a guest on by the name of Professor Griff. Now, he used to be with the rap group called Public Enemy, and they were popular in the late 80s. They were all about like social justice type of rap, And so what happened was he had made some comments in the late 80s, Professor Griff, that were perceived as anti-Semitic. And because of that, he was blasted in the media as someone being anti-Semitic, and then basically was blackballed. Because, you know, the way things have been in this country is that the Jews in this country tend to like dominate the music industry, TV, and the movie industry. And so when he was made these comments, and they weren't based on what he said in the video on YouTube on Nick's show, I didn't really take them as anti-Semitic. He was basically stating the reality of it. He said what I just said, that the Jews were, you know, were dominating those three areas, and that, you know, some of the contracts that had been given to artists were very exploited. He brought that up. And they ran with that, saying that, you know, he was anti-Semitic. And on the show, he says, I've never said anything bad or against Jews, but because of that, he was blackballed. So fast forward to this week, he's on Nick Cannon's show, and they're having a discussion about race and slavery, which can be a very sensitive topic. You know, I can understand, like, for white folks, how hearing about that stuff would be uncomfortable because it's a history that's horrific and really nothing to be proud about. So I can understand that. But at the same time, you know, it is history. It happened, you know, and so people have a right to talk about it. It's just like, you know, I don't hear people telling Jewish people not to talk about the Holocaust. You know, it's kind of like, I would say, comparable to that. So most of what they said, and this is my perception of it, and I'll go into more detail, but I just kind of want to give, to kind of set it up for you all. So my thing was, they were basically talking about the history of what happened. And they made the comment that, well, you know, that people of color are really the Semitic people. So how could they be anti-Semitic because they would be against themselves? But there's some comments that Nick made that I think were really murky, and that's what kind of got him into trouble. And I'll talk about that a little later in the show. Really, really interesting. Just to cap it off, and I'll toss it over to Mickey, is that Viacom, because of this show he had on YouTube, Viacom, CBS that he was signed with, dropped him this week. So that's why I say I don't know if he has any of these shows anymore that I just named, because he was dropped this week from Viacom.
All right, and then for my particular topic this week, mine's a little bit different. I was just thinking about, so obviously we talk about very, very broad stroke type of things now, because everything is very different for everyone and wherever they happen to be right now. But I thought about how, as we sort of enter, well, we're not even entering, the second wave is here. But so as that continues onward, what it's going to be like for people trying to travel. Me personally, I am not trying to go anywhere. I don't think people should be traveling right now. I mean, if it's like a driving journey, I think like there maybe could be an argument made for that, as long as you're, you know, probably gonna have to sleep in, it's the safest probably to sleep in your car. And depending on where you're going camping. That's probably like I would say would be a safe travel option right now, just because I don't think that flying makes a ton of sense. And I also know that airlines have been saying things like, oh, we're just like, people are going to be on the flight, but it won't be fully booked. It'll just be people in the window and aisle seat, and there won't be anyone in between. And then people will get on the plane and the whole plane is actually full. So people are just sitting next to each other. So I don't think that flying is very safe right now. And just with the way that America is kind of botching this whole thing, there's the whole question of whether or not Americans are even going to be allowed to engage in certain types of international travel, because other countries might say, sorry, we can't have you here, like you're a risk for us. But so that was kind of that was something that I was sort of thinking about in terms of a topic for us to discuss this week. But I'm going to throw it back over to Joseph. Joseph, if you want to get things started for us.
Absolutely. What I want to start off with first is to tell people about a handful of companies that are open and are working around the COVID. So Trustworthy Cleaners is here in the Fort Lauderdale area. They're a cleaning solution in Wilton Manors, and they also cover Middle River Terrace area as well. If you need cleaning done, your house, vacation rental, pool, boat, or cars, they've been doing it for over 10 years. They do have some new procedures, however, and protective measures, but they are open and ready to serve you. Now, with all new no-contact options to keep you and their employees safe, you can email them directly at trustworthycleaners33304@gmail.com. They have excellent references. They have local workers. You can help support a local business today by reaching out to them. That's trustworthycleaners33304@gmail.com. The next company I need to tell you about is WeGo LLC. WeGo LLC is a local company that operates here in Fort Lauderdale also as well. You should probably see their image come up in a couple of seconds, hopefully, and I think that I just did. They operate in Middle River Terrace and Oakland Park area also. If you pre-plan your trip with them, you can make your life a lot easier during these stress-filled times. If you need a ride to or from work, need your grocery shopping done, or they even do laundry services as well. Runs to the bank, anything that you need. No contact, no touch options can make things a lot safer for you and the drivers or delivery people as well. They will be wearing face masks and shields, and in addition, after each and every passenger in the car, they will be sanitizing also. You can visit www.wegolllc.app to learn more. Once again, plan your trip at least 24 hours in advance because services are subject to availability. Don't forget, that's www.wegolllc.app. Contact them today. You will definitely not regret it. Every Wednesday at noon, please to tune in to the Big Daddy's Stock Tips from the Hood. As Big Daddy Marty Allen shares his unique insights on the stock market with hot stock tips, trends, when to buy, when to sell, you yourself can learn how to become a day trader with a pretty minimal investment. And at this point in time, we're all going to be stuck at home. We need to start looking at new options about how to make money. This can or possibly might be able to help fill your time or help make some money. It's every Wednesday at noon on the Rogue Radio Network. Check it out. That's the rogueradionetwork.com. Now, back to the actual topics at hand. And these are some heavy topics. We always do have some heavy topics. And that's the reason why I love talking with both of you, because it's nice to have some fun, smart people with different opinions. The main topic is the cancel culture. Now, I printed off a whole bunch of material because you know me, I can't help myself. I take hours every week doing this kind of stuff. And the first person that I thought of for cancel culture, the most recent one that I thought of was, you can probably see it, Roseanne Barr. That's the first one that I thought of. And I know you're talking about Nick Cannon, but that's the first one that I thought of. So it's a whole thing. I didn't realize it was a thing, and I feel so daft and a little silly that I never even knew what the cancel culture was until you told me about what it was, Rajee. So Please explain to all of us out there who have no clue what it is. And I think there might be more people than you think that don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, that's a term that I would say in the last few years has been used, because in the last few years, you've seen a lot of people literally overnight lose their careers because of a comment they made or something they did. And, it's one of those things, because I think to judge someone totally on one comment or one incident, like their whole life, I don't know. It doesn't quite fit well with me. But at the same time, I think it's boiling down to the level of offensiveness that that person may have caused or done. So for instance, in Roseanne Barr's case, well, she had been treading on thin water, if you ask me, for a while. Because, she would blurt shit out all the time and stuff that was a little inappropriate or whatever. And, people would just let it kind of slide. But this one happened to be racial. And in this country, in the last few years, when you're talking about race, you have to really, in my opinion, tread lightly. Because people are ultra sensitive, and what someone could say back in the 80s, in 2020, they might have to think about. They might have to think twice about it. Another one that comes to mind, and I'm losing her name now. I hate when I do that. The cook, she was a Southern cook. Oh my God, she had her own show. And she made it was another
Paula Jean.
Yes.
Probably Paula
yes.
Jean. Yeah,
I
know
was
who
on
you're
the tip of my tongue. This is another example of someone literally losing their career like overnight, pretty much. And so, with Nick, I don't know if you all want to go into what he said that I think got him in really a lot of trouble. I save that for a little later. If Mick wants to chime in on what he thinks about cancel culture, go right ahead.
I think that cancel culture is very hard to define just because it's, when you boil it down to something, it's basically that someone has been, usually a public figure, has been stripped of their celebrity, of their endorsements, and they don't make a career off of being famous anymore. And the variety of how that happens is kind of strange, because there are certain people who probably should, well, not even probably should, but by all sense of that word and that terminology, if you're following, that they lose everything because of like actions of theirs. I would say someone like Mel Gibson, who has gone on racist tirades and like abused his ex-wives and like just been a general menace to society. I think someone like Chris Brown, whose actions we've seen, what he did to Rihanna, what he did to his other partner Karrueche Tran. I think that like people like that should probably be canceled, but they're clearly not. But then you could also argue that someone like Sinead O'Connor was canceled. And now all that Sinead O'Connor did was raise awareness about the fact that the church is defends a bunch of pedophiles. And she lost her entire, I would argue that she saw way more repercussions for speaking up for what was right than anyone like Mel Gibson or Chris Brown has ever experienced. So the thing about cancel culture is that, and that's the thing where it's like, you have to think that oftentimes when I think about cancel culture, the problem with it is that the wrong people end up getting canceled over things that in hindsight, we look back on it and we were like, we were maybe a little bit too harsh on them, whether it's someone like Janet Jackson, who lost a lot of her career for what was literally a wardrobe malfunction. Even if it was a staged thing, no one deserves to lose their career over their body. I thought that, then looking back on that, I think that was a really, really embarrassing and awful time for the media, because the way that they just kind of went at that was, I think, very terrible. Now, for someone like Nick Cannon, I don't think that he is going to per se be canceled, because he already even if he was quote unquote canceled and is no longer in entertainment anymore, it's he'll still be fine. He still has what I'm guessing are probably millions, maybe even more than that, who knows, but he'll be fine financially. And the thing is he is still famous enough that he could still have a platform, even if no major studio like Viacom wants to give it to him. And then that also goes into the fact that what he did say about Jewish people was, quite frankly, very close-minded and very bigoted. he used the example of the Rothschild family as the bankers who are supposedly like controlling all of the money in the world from like behind the shadows, which is a really dangerous thing to spread right now, because not only is that not true, but hate crimes against Jewish people in this country are going up, as are hate crimes pretty much like for, I would say, many groups of people. But there are literal Nazis who are like getting airtime on Fox News and getting retweeted by like members of Congress. So I just don't like, I think that what Nick Cannon said was wrong, and like and he is now kind of paying the price for that. And then on top of bringing that up, he also brought up Louis Farrakhan, who is one of the heads of the Nation of Islam, and he is a person who is notoriously anti-Semitic, and also I believe he's also very homophobic. I'm not super familiar with his work, but that's because I've heard from enough people whose views I respect and value have pretty much told me like he's a monster, he's not a good person. And so Nick Cannon used him to kind of also talk about anti-Semitic thoughts with another member of Public Enemy who was kicked out of Public Enemy for being anti-Semitic. So I think that that's like, there were a bunch of different things. Like, it wasn't just that Nick Cannon made like a bigoted comment about Jewish people. He said a bigoted comment about Jewish people, invoking another anti-Semite while in the presence of another of a person who also was quote unquote canceled for being an anti-Semite. So I think that the repercussions for his actions kind of make sense. But I'm going to throw it over to Joseph, because I know that unless Rajee, if you wanted to respond to that, because I know I just responded to your point.
Well, no, what I was going to say is I think you made a really powerful point, because I don't know if someone can be blackballed today like they could have been 10, 20 years ago, because of all the outlets, social media outlets that you have. So I don't know if the power of blackballing someone or trying to silence them or shut them down is as strong as it used to be. In the middle of the video, I found the video on YouTube. While I was watching it, YouTube pulled it down, because I had texted to my cousin and two other friends. My cousin tried to pull it up. She said, it's not there anymore. When I went on my phone, I was watching it on my desktop and tried to pull it up, it said this video has been removed. But because I was on the video, viewing it in real time, them pulling it down didn't affect me. I was still able to watch the video. Now, more than anti-Semitic, I actually think these comments he made were the ones that got him in trouble, but I could be wrong. I don't know if you remember in the video when he said, well, because of the blue blood, which blue blood, for those of you all who don't know what that term is someone with no melanin in their skin. And the reason why they say blue blood is you can see the veins and you see the color blue. And so that's what the terminology is. So, they were saying that because the first human beings on the planet were in Africa, the blue blood people were the furthest away and disconnected from God, the source. And this is what I think really got me in trouble, is and that because they were in Europe and they were lacking sun, they lost their melanin over time, and almost like a biological, genetic type of default. And so because they lost their melanin, they lost the connection, and because of it, he then goes on to say, because of the harsh conditions of Europe, these people became violent, and they became aggressive, and they became dominant. But it was because of the fact that it was a survival thing for them. So he then went on to say that white people are really the ones that are less than, and that if anyone were going to be called animals, they are the ones that are like animals. Now, I don't think he really meant it that way. I think the way it came out, it was misinterpreted. It was almost like a blanket statement against all white folks. And so I think that's what got him in trouble. But that whole animal thing, I interpret it like, well, you know, when white people want to be racist, they'll say, oh, black folks are like monkeys, right? So I think he was trying to say if you were gonna even call a human being an animal, well, they would be the ones that the Europeans that, you know, wanted to dominate the world and do it in such a harsh and brutal and violent way. Because, see, they were trying to get to the root of why these ancestral Europeans wanted to dominate the world. And they did it for the most part. And then, but the way they did it, how come it was so brutal? And so that's the part of the video I think that really got him into trouble. But I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rajee, for that. One thing that I wanted to also bring up, though, is sometimes the cancel culture can happen to people and it actually helps them. So I thought of two different people, and I think it's worth talking about both of them. The first one is actually one of my favorites. She's got street cred, Martha Stewart, and then also Ellen DeGeneres. I don't know if you all remember, but when Ellen came out, it was a big deal. She didn't have anything going on for a while, and now look at her. And when Martha went to prison, it was a big deal. And then she, you know, was a tough chick in prison, and now things are going well for her as well. So I think it's kind of interesting to think about how cancel culture can or could be temporary. With both of those incidents, they turned into something better, and some people learn a lesson, and then some people don't, and they consider to continue to do the same cancel thing. I can think of one person right now that I think should be canceled off of the planet. I won't say his name because it gives more power to it, but he has horrible hair and he sits behind a desk at the Oval Office and he looks a little bit like an Oompa Loompa. But I wish that would be the ultimate cancellation. Personally, I think it might be the best, but I'm talking about the good stuff, but I wanted to interject a little bit of humor to the topic. What do you think about Ellen and also Martha Stewart, how they turned, or what do they do differently to turn the cancel culture into something positive, Mick?
Oh, well, I think. Oh, Rajee, did you? Okay. I think another thing that I probably should have pointed out when I think of cancel culture. The other thing that happens with it is that this is a decision made by, like, I would argue, like, the culture at large. Like, there is such a backlash against something that this person did that it took away their career. And, like, for example, I think, again, a good example of that is Sinead O'Connor, because after she tore up that picture of the Pope on SNL, she was booed at Madison Square Garden. She was taken off the radio. She literally lost everything. That's someone who's been canceled. Now, someone like Martha Stewart going to jail, I don't think is quite the same thing, because her actions, obviously, like, those actions got her into trouble, but I don't ever really remember anyone screaming, like, for the resignation and, like, the forfeiture of, like, all of Martha Stewart's, like, rights and abilities to be a celebrity. Because I remember even when she was in jail, she was still getting profiles in, like, People magazine, and people would be like, oh, like, this is what Martha does, like, on her days where she's, like, allowed out of her cell or whatever. Like, I would argue that she was not canceled in the way that I think that we're currently talking about cancel culture. Someone like Nick Cannon saying something anti-Semitic, or Roseanne Barr saying something racist. I would argue more so that kind of what happened there was like Martha Stewart had a scandal. And while scandals, I think, can lead to cancel culture, I don't think that was the case with her. I would also probably argue just the same thing with Ellen, just in the sense that, like, I if she was well and truly canceled, she wouldn't have been able to come back. Like that's another idea of like being canceled. Like if you're like well and truly canceled, there's no way for you to kind of come back. And if anything, like, I mean, I guess maybe back then I wasn't like, God, when she came out on TV, I was probably not even like 8 or 9 years old. So I might not remember really all that well. But I would also say that she's probably not someone who has been canceled in the sense that we had. Like, again, she had something that was, or she had an event that was considered controversial, but I wouldn't say that she was full on canceled in a way that we've seen someone like Sinead O'Connor, Janet Jackson, I would also argue. And unfortunately, I really can't think of anyone who really has deserved to be canceled, like taken out of the public eye and not allowed to have a platform, who really, really deserves it. Because if that was the case, there would be a lot less people in Hollywood. I guess you could maybe say someone like Harvey Weinstein, I guess, has been kind of canceled. But also, I think canceled doesn't quite go to the extent of what he is exactly guilty of. Like, he didn't just say or like do something that was like quote unquote offensive. Like, he abused and terrorized and raped many women and made it so that he could get away with that. So I think that even more so than cancellation, something like that applies to someone like him. Like, he deserves to be like, you know, punished for his actions. Like, not just, oh, like he just loses his career and what, like, not like, no, you've committed many crimes. Yeah, so that's what I would say. I guess, rounding it all up, I would say that probably, in my opinion, definitely, I don't think Martha Stewart was ever canceled, because I don't ever really remember a moment where she was really taken out of pop culture in like such a terrible way, or was ever like, how's she going to recover from this? And Ellen, I would say probably as well, because she's also done very well for herself. But again, I'm not really familiar with maybe what happened in the immediate aftermath of that Laura Dern episode. So maybe there's some level of that there, but she's now one of the biggest entertainment icons of all time. And currently she might actually be getting canceled, but this is for the way that she treats her employees. There was a really, really big expose in BuzzFeed about her being an awful person, which is kind of an open secret out here in California. Everyone's kind of got a friend who's had a terrible Ellen story, and that she's not the nice person that people see her like portrayed as on TV. So we could, I guess you could say, in the next few weeks, maybe see Ellen get canceled. Again, she's got so much money and so much influence, and other people also just won't care to cancel her, that I think she will probably also still be fine. But I'm going to throw it over to Rajee now.
Well, okay, so for me, you know, a lot of times it comes down to reputation too. Yeah, people have money, and let's say someone like Bill Cosby, who has millions and millions of dollars. He's pretty much at the end of his journey, and so for me, the smear of his name and his reputation was probably as devastating as if he lost all his millions. I really think a lot of times, you know, people's reputation and their popularity kind of is in that same zone. I mean, of course, granted, if you lose your reputation and you don't have a good one anymore, it's nice that you have a few $1 million in the bank to fall back on. But also, like in regards to Sinead O'Connor, she was ahead of her time with that. And she got punished for it, because the Catholic Church, the last time I checked, they were in the news in the last number of years for the, you know, the child pedophilia that was going on. So I think Sinead O'Connor was ahead of her time, and she did that, calling them out before the world caught up. Because if she did that today, I don't think it would have been as much of a scandal as it was. I mean, let's face it, the Catholic Church is pretty powerful. So her doing that, I see how in those days she would have been shut down. But sometimes people have to do something, it's the right thing to do, even though it's not the time per se to do it, or it's too early, quote unquote, to do it. And I think that's what she did. She was just trying to call out what the world knows now. The world knows that. So, you know, another person that comes to mind is Kathy Griffith. Now, I think it's a mixed bag with people. Some people are canceled and they lose their total career. It's over. Some people, they kind of regain like a little bit, but maybe they're not as popular as they used to be. And Kathy Griffith, I mean, she still has a career, but it took her about a year to recoup. And I don't even know if she'd be at the level now. Like, I don't think any of the major networks would hire her to do like a New Year's Eve show like she used to do, something like that. So maybe she has been, you know, a bit affected by it. Another one, Pee Wee Herman. And you know what? Pee Wee Herman, you know, that was his private sexual life, right? But because of what he did, he was on TV with the children. For something like that to come out, it ruined his career. Now, in recent years, I've seen like little things that he's trying to do to come back. But, you know, that's another thing. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, there weren't any children involved in his sexual escapades. But because he was a child celebrity, for that to come out, him going to a movie theater, a sex movie theater, that was the thing that just was like the nail in the coffin. The nail in the coffin. Look at one more, and I'll throw it over to Joseph. Look at Winona Ryder when she did the shoplifting, how that affected her. I mean, it took her years to come back to really get some decent roles in Hollywood. I think in recent years she's had like roles here and there. But that's another thing. Another one, I should say. Joseph?
Joseph, I think you're still muted.
Yes. Thank you so much, Rajee, and thank you so much, Mick, for chiming in with the topic. And thank you so much, Rajee, for bringing it up. I just want to say hello to La in Ohio. She will be on a little bit later with a delectable delight to talk about. The next topic is, I believe, Mick is the one who brought this one up. Travel, is that correct? And I got a whole bunch of data to support you depending on what you bring up. So I'm going to toss it over to you first and then chime in when necessary. Mick?
For sure. I mean, actually, if you even wanted to start, I'm just curious to know kind of what your specific information is that you've kind of brought up, just because I'm just very curious. And me personally, I am not looking to really travel right now. I know that my boss, she was supposed to be traveling at this time this year. She's supposed to be in Italy. She only just recently got her refund for that, and she's been trying to get it since probably mid-February, early March. So I know that that is something that travel agencies, well, not travel agencies, airlines, and people who are, you know, having weddings or having events and whatnot seem to really be holding out faith that things are going to get better in the next few months and that things are really going to work out. I know that friends of mine have talked about people who are going to have big destination weddings. Like they were going to go abroad, like somewhere in Europe for this massive wedding, and they only recently canceled like this week. And so that means that you have to assume that these people were thinking, not only are we going to have this wedding abroad, we're going to bring all of our closest friends and family together to dance, drink, and eat food, and then travel back to the States together. So I think that people maybe need to just accept for a little while that travel, especially probably by airplane, really is not an accessible or safe thing for you to do right now. Obviously, there are going to be instances where, God forbid, you have to go home because a family member is very ill, or you have to move for a job or something. I understand that there are circumstances that people will need to fly, but I think for the most part, if you can just stay home and learn some new things about your neighborhood, maybe do a day trip to somewhere nearby where you can just be with like a really close friend and you can hang out, you're not around a ton of people, and still say that you've traveled. I think that there's very many options for people to kind of take right now and do some smaller trips, maybe in their neighborhood or in their state, and to just take advantage of this fact that you might not have time like this to go around and travel very much anymore. Uh, just in the sense that, like, yeah, some things are just, life is different right now. It's not like you're going to be hanging out with friends. You can maybe take the weekend to yourself and go do a small trip, but just be safe about what it is that you're doing. Maybe go camping, or if you're going somewhere, like maybe you're staying with a really close friend who you know has also been distancing. But I think that that is how I feel about travel right now, and that people, unless you're driving anywhere, you should probably just stay home. Joseph?
Yeah, I appreciate what you just said, Mick. So according to TSA, foot traffic in 2019 was 2.254 million people.
Joseph, I think you're muted again.
I don't know how that would happen, but it's very definitely possible. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay,
You dipped out right before, I think you said 2 point something million travelers.
Absolutely. Okay, let me fix this. So I will restate it. And Laura, I love you, but you're sideways. TSA foot traffic for 2019 is 2.254 million people. So that's what the numbers were for TSA. The next numbers are for 2020. I'm actually trying to pull up the graphic, and that's the reason why there was a little bit of a delay and a little bit of a problem. So I'll show you exactly. There's an just a moment. So just bear with me for a second. Sometimes things work smoothly and sometimes they don't. Here we go. So as everyone can see in this graphic, this is 2020 versus 2019. So the blue line was 2019. It hovered right around 2.5 million people the entire year. This year is the orange line, 2020. Right in, I should say, beginning or the middle of March, right when the quote unquote first shutdown happened in the United States, it went from 2 million and now it is down to less than 200,000. That's just foot traffic. Just to put it into perspective for you, that's just foot traffic. The second graphic that I'm going to bring up is actual global traffic also as well, and it brings into point what you were just discussing, Nick, about people traveling around the world. People are not traveling around the world, and they shouldn't be. They should be staying at home. If you are going to take a trip, you should maybe drive somewhere, but then I also have some other data that's very disturbing as well. So this is the global flights, commercial flights, by the way. So this started from February and it goes through April. So around the world, generally speaking, there's about 100,000 flights a day. Understood, that's what happens. Everyone traveling everywhere around the world. March 14th is when it went from 100,000 daily trips a day down to now 30,000 trips a day. So I know what you had mentioned earlier, Mick, was about people traveling and then the flight is empty and then they're shoving everyone on the plane and they're elbow to elbow. I've seen videos of this stuff before. It's very disturbing. And I really don't know what to say about that per se, but the fact is that people shouldn't be traveling, and actually My partner had just gotten some information that someone wanted him to travel. I'm like, it's not a good idea to travel right now, even though the person wants you to go and visit. It didn't make sense. Like a $50 trip, something that usually is $300. Now the airlines are charging $50 for someone to travel. I don't think it's smart because number one, you have to wear a mask as soon as you get to the airport. You're in the mask, you're stressed. It's already a stressful situation. Then you're traveling in an airplane, it's a confined space. And then you have to wear the mask the whole time. So it's not an ideal situation. In some places, it's every other seat that you have a person that's sitting. Some planes, you're elbow to elbow with the videos. And some people don't want to wear a mask. And some people have fake things that say that they don't have to wear a mask. So in reference to traveling locally, I think that is the best idea. But I think it's best for everyone just to stay at home, to be honest with you. I don't think it's that important to go from Fort Lauderdale over to Naples, or from Naples up to Orlando, or from Orlando up to Tallahassee. Personally, that's just my perspective. I think it's better just to stay at home at this point. The numbers are absolutely ridiculous. The first shutdown was when we were 2,000 cases a week. Now in South Florida, we are over 80,000 cases a week. That's a really hard number to wrap your head around. And actually, Los Angeles has something very similar as well. So we had the shutdown first. Things started to calm down. People got cocky. And now we're up to 80,000 cases a week. We're having 100+ people a day die from COVID. And I'm going to read 10 of their names later today. One of them has been highlighted on our website. It's something that I want to start to do. It's going to probably take years for us to go through all the names, and no one is doing it, and I feel like it's necessary. But with travel, I think it's silly. I think it's ridiculous. The only people that I think should be traveling are people that are medical, or they're lawyers, or people that are necessary to go from place to place for fundamental core resource purposes only, and getting people to and from places safely if they're stuck somewhere. That's the only travel that I think is appropriate, personally. Rajee, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, based on what's going on, I do feel that, if you don't have to travel, you should probably stay close to home. I know this threw a monkey wrench in so many things for people. People that had plans. A lot of things were canceled for me. In November, October, supposed to be attending a conference in Puerto Rico. I know that's not going to happen. I mean, I think we've all been affected in this area in some capacity, even if it's local travel. I think everyone on some level has been affected. But, we have to do what we have to do. That saying, you got to do what you got to do. And really, until this thing tapers down, I think that's probably the best bet, for people to only travel if absolutely necessary. And that's pretty much what I think.
Yeah, I mean, I also, on a fundamental level, probably would also say the same thing as well. Like, really, just because there are safe trips that one can take right now. Like, I know people who have gone camping and have gone to campgrounds where they know that they're secluded, or they are like, I mean, really, that's probably like the safest thing that one can do. Or like I said, if you're meeting with a family member or really, really close friend who has been distancing as well. Like, there's ways to be smart about that. But I think with the data, first of all, that Joseph brought up, I mean, it does make sense. Like, things are getting worse right now because people aren't taking it super seriously. And I think that the reason why, and why I'm also sort of agreeing with you guys as well, is just that unless we treat it as very, very severe and just, being very strict with travel rulings and just being like, just don't travel at all, I think that that's a better way to do it. Because even right now, it's like, people want to go to restaurants right now, and people know that restaurants are not safe. And the only way that we're going to not get people to, or the only way that we're going to get people to not go to restaurants is by just saying no restaurants are open. Like, the government has to come in and say, hey, like we're shutting this down for the public health, because otherwise people aren't going to listen. So, you know, you guys are probably onto something that might have to be how it is for travel as well. Like, we're just not allowing travel for anything that isn't absolutely necessary, or yeah, really just that, anything that's like absolutely necessary. But you know, I also, like, I understand how people are getting stir crazy, and if you really think that you can be safe, you shouldn't get on a plane. I'll say that much. You should not get on a plane right now. That, unless again it is a necessity, you need to go home for like a funeral or something, like I understand that. But like, if you do think like, all right, I want to try going on a trip, if you want to take that risk, it has to be something that like you can drive to in your car, and you're doing it, if you're doing it with someone, you have to do it with someone else who's also quarantined. And then when you guys are done doing this trip, you guys have to quarantine again as well. So I mean, that also is, this presumes that people will take those precautions as well, which we've seen people don't even want to wear masks. So I don't know that maybe it's really a good idea to even like encourage any even safe travel, because it doesn't seem like people really are going to do what they need to do in order to keep themselves and other people safe. So yeah, just another thing that we have to do.
I mean, this is one of the things that I want to ask both of you, and Laura, you can chime in if you want to as well. So the government cannot do things correctly, clearly, at this point. We all have learned this. Federal, yes, local, state, doesn't make any difference, county, city. It's clear that we are led by absolute morons. I have no other way to say it. And I don't care who I piss off, to be honest with you. So I think that the important part is that the business owners, whoever they are, if it's a local bar, a local restaurant, a giant airport, a giant airplane, a giant corporation, they should be able to think in their head, which is more important, the people that work for me or the money that the people that I make from the people that work for me. We don't have to wait for the government to say to shut things down. A bar can say, I don't want anyone to come here because I'm afraid that my employees are going to get sick. An airline could say, I don't want to fly a plane. I don't want to put my people at risk. We don't have to wait for that. And clearly, there has to be a point in time, I think, with all of this crap that's going on, that's very frustrating. I understand being like, you know, what is it, cabin fever or something like that? I guess that's the right term. I understand that everyone's frustrated, but the fact is we have to change the way that we've been programmed. All of us have been programmed. You go to work, you do this, you have a house, you have a car, you have all of these different things we've been programmed. You have to have a college degree. All those things we've been programmed with. And now we have this opportunity to look at things completely differently than we ever have in our entire lives. And if the corporations aren't going to do the right thing, we know the government is not doing the right thing, clearly. All they care about is getting the economy started. And the reason why they want to restart the economy, legally speaking, is so that they can release the moratorium on evicting people. Because technically, once everything's okay, they can kick you out of your place. So that's the reason why they're pushing it forward. They want to shut off your electric. They want to shut off your water. They want to take your car. They want you to be stuck at home. They don't want to help you. It sounds like they want you, but at the end of the day, they don't want to help you, because if they wanted to help you, they would be making us all safe at home individually in our own homes, and they're not doing that. They are not our big brother. They are not helping us. We're completely being misled. It's frustrating, and I'm trying to remain calm, but the fact of the matter is that our governmental system is so corrupt. I think personally, that's my personal perspective, not Mick's or Rajee's or Laura's. I'm speaking for myself. I think that it's time for the business owners, the simple guy at the corner store, at the gas station, at a bar, at a restaurant, to say, no, enough is enough. And until we do that, we're all going to be put at risk because someone wants to make money off of somebody else. And I have over 21 pages of people who died in the month of March, just in Florida. I have 51 pages of names for the month of April. It will take us probably 5 years before we can read all of the names of the people who died just in Florida.
I'll chime in.
Yes, Laura.
Well, Joe, I appreciate your sentiment, but you know what? you're looking at things through rose-colored glasses, because these business owners, not all of them, but many of them, are the same people who don't believe in wearing masks. So why are they all of a sudden going to do the right thing? They're not going to do the right thing. The government has to mandate it because people in general, a lot of them will not do the right thing. And they're motivated by fear. They need money. I've heard people who get COVID referred to as low-hanging fruit, which means they're easy to pick off. Now, that's not the way to refer to other human beings. That's heinous. But I've heard that. And people just don't even care. And I know a 62-year-old who's in the hospital very sick. I know there's children under the age of 6 who have contracted it. So the old aren't safe, the sick aren't safe, the young aren't safe. And owners are not going to close down their businesses. They want the money. They don't care. I mean, there may be a few here and there. My daughter caught COVID because she works in a restaurant, and the restaurant opened back up. And she's pretty certain that's where she got it, even though she has been very careful. And she lives with a guy who works in the emergency room. He's a nurse, and he tested negative. He didn't have it. She had it only in their household. So the only place she can think of, because the only place she went was work. So, you know what? She told them, I can't come to work, and they never closed down. They never put anything on Facebook and said, we had an employee test positive for COVID. So don't give people too much credit, because I hate to say it, but people are stupid.
And I thank you for what you said. You know, I would piggyback on that to say that maybe there are some of the business owners that do care, but I think you hit on something about the fear. And, you know, these, especially if it's a mom and pop business, these people are scared that their businesses are just gonna like collapse. They're scared, and they're also concerned about the employees that they have and them being able to work to feed their families. So, you know, I understand about like doing the right thing, but unless, like you were saying, Laura, unless the government mandates it, I don't think businesses are going to take it on themselves to do it for many different reasons. For many different reasons. If I'm a business owner and I have 50 employees, okay, and I know that, well, hey, the government is saying businesses can open up, do you really think I'm going to stay home and open my business? Because first of all, I don't want to lose my business. Secondly, I have 50 employees that are counting on me to be able to work to provide for their families. So, you know, it's very complex. There's so many layers to it, and I just don't think it's cut and dry. Of course, you know, we live in a society, like a functioning civilization society, a civilized society that functions with an economy. And, you know, with people getting up and going to work and making money and being able to pay their bills. So if you're talking about all businesses closing, you're basically talking about things collapsing. Like, because if, let's say I have a job and my business closes, that means that I can't pay my rent, I can't pay my phone bill, I can't pay, you know, because listen, unemployment, I haven't heard really good things about them in the sense of like people waiting forever to get their unemployment compensation or benefit. And so, you know, it's just so many layers to it. So, and then I just wanted to put those two cents in.
Mick, over to you.
Yeah, I actually see points on both of your guys' sides, because I don't think that business owners are going to do anything, but I also don't think that the government is going to do anything either. Where it really needs to come from is it needs to come from the workers themselves. I just think that for too long, we have ascribed by this way of thinking, all right, because our economy is set up a certain way, in order for it to work, it has to stay open. When very, very easily, like, if we wanted rent to just stop, if people wanted rent to just stop, it could stop. Like, there is no, like, money, when you really get down to it, money is a trust thing. You can argue that money, if you don't want it to, money doesn't have any value. And I think that it should come down to, like, for example, there are workers out here in a Burger King in Santa Monica, California. They recently went on strike because one of their workers, it was actually a trans employee as well. They had contracted COVID and were still forced to go into work because they couldn't obviously not have their job. And they ended up dying of COVID. And like I said, they probably contracted it at work, and management did not inform them, or management did not inform their fellow employees that this person had been ill and that they had been ill at work. So they organized their own strike. And that's really where all of this needs to come from, because it's like, the people know what we need. Like, I personally do not need, fundamentally, like, for my day-to-day expenses and like for what I also kind of want out of life right now, like, I'm not asking for very much, especially if you think of it in the grand scheme of like what the 1% has. Like, even if I had a fraction of the resources and the money and the opportunities that they had, I would still lead an amazing life. Like, if I had access to just 1% of the 1%, if I had access to 1% of $50 billion, I would have a perfectly grand life, more so than a lot of other people. So it has to come down to this idea that, like, just the ways in which we live our daily lives have to be changed, because certain people, some of the richest people in the world, don't do any work. It's just that they are the heads of companies and they own intellectual property, or they have the most shares in a company that, yeah, maybe you started, but has been kept alive and kept afloat by the workers who work for you. Is not you operating every single spreadsheet, every mail room, cleaning every stall in your building. You are not doing that on your own. And if you are, I mean, then okay, fine, but there is no CEO who's doing that. So I think that it has to come down to people organize on a general strike. That are currently in LA, there are people who are on rent strike. I spoke to someone who was like, I've been on rent strike for 4 months now.
Wow.
Which is wild to me. But honestly, at a certain point, it's like, the government is not listening. Like, many bosses are not listening to people right now. I think I've been grateful for, like, my work right now. Like, my boss has been very understanding, and like, she had us working from home before it was even mandated to do so. So I'm glad that, like, she's been on board with that. And it's just like, yeah, I mean, I think that, like, people need to take back a little bit of power at this point, because the government's not doing anything for you. And like, a lot of these companies aren't doing anything for you. Like, what has Costco done for you? Costco hasn't done anything for you. What has Amazon done for you? Amazon has not done anything for you that you haven't already paid them for. Like, yeah, they deliver your groceries because you paid them to do that, but what else has it done? Like, they don't contribute taxes in your area.
Yeah, you're right.
Go ahead, Rajee.
No, I just, well, no, what I was going to say is, it's something like, I think about how, like, we always talk about the different layers, like what you were saying, Mick, about, it comes down to people, like workers decide, okay, they're not going to work, and that sort of thing. But, it's funny, like this week, I had to call my real estate office because I was having plumbing issues. And I couldn't help but think, like, I live in a building, it's a flat apartment, and four apartments. And in the real estate office, they have, like, a number of apartment buildings. Some are really huge, some are small. And I couldn't help but think, like, wow, if everyone stopped paying their rent, then would there be workers for me to call the office to say my plumbing is giving me problems? And would they even be able to get a plumber to come out? I mean, like, it just gets so, I mean, and I'm talking about, like, little old me, like my little world, and how something like that could be affected because of, like, everything's stopping.
Well, well,
yeah.
well, Rajee, if that ever does
Unless
happen,
you guys come over and do my plumbing, honey.
that's actually that's actually what I was just going to say is if you need someone to lay the pipe.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying if you need someone to fix your plumbing, I'm joking. You know what I mean. If you need someone to, oh, stop it. If you need someone to fix something, you can call me. I'll be down there, but you're going to have a mask on, and so will I. But I'm going to switch things up a little bit with the order. I want to start with La, and we're going to end with me. We're going to go in reverse order with the schedule that I had for everybody. So how about we start off with La's food prep. I saw the photo. It looks delicious. I was tempted to post it, but I didn't because I didn't want to let people know ahead of time. So Can you let us know what you're making?
Yeah. Today I am going to make wild blueberry crumble. So I'm going to sort of reel you in a little bit. I had everybody vote last week, and wild blueberry crumble won out. And so that's okay, because we can do peaches next week, because my peaches don't come till Thursday. So we're trying to eat seasonally. We're calling this essential pleasures, because you've got to eat. And if you know a few things, and I don't know everything, but I know some stuff and I like to share it, you can eat well and, nourish your body, nourish your soul. You can be liberated from, you don't have to get carry out. There's nothing wrong with it. I love going to a restaurant when it's good, but you can always eat well, and it's not that hard. So this week I wanted to talk first before we get to the recipe. I'm going to start my little timer so I know where I'm at, about organics. We talked about this last week. I would urge you, because I don't have a website for this on hand, I have another website, but you can Google the Dirty Dozen produce if you're concerned. For example, spinach is a superfood. Spinach is very dirty, though. It gets a lot of pesticides on it. So everything I bring into my house, even avocados, which you don't eat the skin, I don't care. I just do this basic method, and I think you should too. Now, this is an essential piece of kitchen equipment. I think everybody should have a salad spinner. Looks like this. You got the little basket in here. You put your produce in here, your lettuce, celery, spinach, avocados. Like I say, even if it has the skin, I do my baked potatoes because I want all that pesticides gone. You put in some baking soda. It's really inexpensive. You always should have this, because you can also use this to exfoliate your face. I mean, you do whatever you want with this. You dump in a tablespoon, fill this basket up, leave it in there for 20 minutes. Pull the basket out, dump the water out, put in some fresh water, put it back in, rinse it, dump all the water out again, put this on, and push it down, and centrifugal force takes all the water out. So it's also a good way you can keep lettuce in here. It keeps it really crisp and stuff after you do that. So I always clean my produce. So look for the Dirty Dozen, clean the dirty stuff. Buy organic if you're going to buy berries, because they're more difficult to clean. Raspberries, they get kind of messed up when you get all that water, or strawberries, you might not want to soak them. So clean your produce. Second thing I want to say is eating seasonally. We talked about that last week, and I have a website for you, but the first website and the most important website or email is me, Laura, at mySouthernExposure.site. Okay, don't forget that. Get in touch with me. But if you want to go on, it's a government website. Government, we're kind of putting them down, but they're not all bad. There's, some information you can get. You could just Google produce in season, or you could go to the SNAP website, and it's kind of a long, I'll post this, but you could just Google produce in season. You'll come up with a list. What's in spring, what's in summer, what's in fall, what's in winter, what's around all year long. And then you can buy in season. It just makes sense. It's going to be fresher. It's going to be less expensive. So why wouldn't you do that, right? So in following with that, I have my handy dandy, this is a little ad. We need to get Aldi. We've got La Madame, but they're only with you guys in Florida. Aldi's around the country. They have tons of organic produce, but I happen to have their flyer. But right now, avocados, cherries, watermelons, they're all on here, and you can see how much they are. They're less expensive than they normally are. That's because they're the things that are in season. So that's what you want to look for. And this is kind of like, oh, grandma's looking at her, you know, flyer or whatever. But, you know, grandma knows a thing or two. I am not a grandma, by the way. But you can look on here. It's a good idea, you know, and stuff you normally get. And I'm a big Aldi fan. So look in your flyer. Now, one of the things in your flyer and one of the things on the produce website that's seasonal is going to be blueberries. Yes, and that takes us to today's recipe. Last week we asked you to vote. Wild blueberry crumble won out over peach cobbler because I made an executive decision because the peaches aren't coming till Thursday. But this is a great recipe. And I buy the organic blueberries because, again, with the berries, you know, and they have a nice bag of them at Aldi, frozen, organic. Then they're in your freezer. You take them out. You take a pie pan. Now, if they're frozen, I put them in the pie pan till they thaw. Let them thaw, you know, whatever. Then, but you want to have your pie pan grease. So you may have to take them back out, grease it, put it back in, whatever. Such an easy recipe. Okay, put your fruit in there. Now, this is wild blueberry crumble, but if you have some leftover fruit that you're almost thinking this needs to go on the compost pile, you can make this with whatever you've got. Peaches are delicious. I've used pineapple and sprinkled a little coconut in there. So you're using up what you have. Pears, apples, I would chop them up real small, slice and thin. But you don't think you can figure it out. You take that fruit that's in your pie pan and you sprinkle it with a mixture of cinnamon and sugar. And I just use my old cinnamon container so it doesn't smell like garlic salt, because that's important, folks. And just add some cinnamon and sugar and just get it to, you know, looks like a color that you like. And you sprinkle that fruit real good. Then you take this and you set it aside. And there's a picture of this is going to be on the website. So you set that aside, and then in another bowl, you mix up, this is so easy, 1 cup of flour, 1 cup of regular sugar, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, which is different than baking soda. People get confused. Baking powder, and 1 teaspoon of salt. You mix that all together. You take an egg, 1 egg, you drop it in there. You mix it around. It's better if you use your fingers. That's okay. Nobody's judging you. So that it gets all incorporated. Then you take that mixture that you just put in the bowl, and you dump it over the fruit. Try to get it all covered up, but you don't have to be anal about it or whatever, anal retentive or whatever. You don't have to be that way. You take some butter, hard stick of butter, and this is a cheese slicer, and you grate a little bit of butter all over the top of this. And you want to try to sort of get it, you know, gotta stop my timer, get it all over the top, and then you bake it for 45 minutes at 350, and the top gets crunchy on the top, and then the blueberries are down below. And then on the website, I have a picture of one that everybody in my house didn't dig into. But this is that crumbly, delicious topping. These are the blueberries. And then you take, I'm not going to tell you because I went over time, but you can make whipped cream real easy at home. Or you can buy some. Then you take it, you put it right on that. And when it's warm, it's delicious. Room temperature, it's delicious. You can heat it in the microwave. This is better for you for breakfast probably than Cocoa Puffs. I mean, it's not dietetic or anything because there is sugar in there, but you're getting all those blueberries, and blueberries are great antioxidants. So, excuse me, you will want to make this wild blueberry crumble and keep this recipe in your arsenal because, like I said, you can use fruit that's getting a little bit, I got to get rid of this, bananas, whatever. I've made it with all kinds of things. And don't forget to get in touch with me. Tell me what you want me to make, Laura at mysouthernexposure.site. I need a drink of my drink. So that's all I got. Next week, peach cobbler. I am so excited for that one.
Okay, so I'm going to let you take a sip of your drink to make that cough go down. But I do have a question. How do you make that homemade whipped cream?
Okay, I'm glad you asked, Joseph. I buy heavy whipping cream. I pour a cup. You have to eyeball things sometimes. It's easy. When you're baking, you want to be a little more precise, but when you're just throwing something. So maybe you put in half of this into, it's nice to have a metal bowl. They're great in the kitchen because they're very handy for storage. Put the bowl in the refrigerator or the freezer for a while so it gets nice and cold. You want to make sure it's clean because whipping cream needs a clean bowl. And your bowl should be clean anyway, right? I mean, come on. So you throw in some of that cream. And what I do when I'm making this dessert, I throw in maybe a tablespoon of sugar. Again, kind of eyeball it. And with this blueberry crumble, I like to throw in a little bit of lemon juice. And I always have, people say fresh lemon. I mean, that's a little bit of a hassle sometimes. I have a jar of lemon juice in the bottle of lemon juice in the refrigerator. And you can use that. I put in a little bit of that, maybe a little drop or two of vanilla. And then you take the beaters and you beat that sucker. I mean, it's a good kind of beating. You beat that whipped cream up until, it gets, what whipped cream looks like, right? You don't want to overdo it. It separates. But as soon as you can take this and turn it off and pull it up out of the whipped cream and you see little peaks in the whipped cream, it's ready to go. And then if you don't eat it all on your blueberry crumble, the next morning you put it on your coffee. You're not gonna let it go to waste. You can give it to your cat. I don't know if you can give it to your cat if it has sugar in it, but it's just the heavy whipping cream. Or you could use ice cream on this crumble, or if you're feeling lazy like Joseph sometimes is, I don't know, you can just warm up your crumble and just pour a little bit of this cream on top of it. You don't have to whip it. That's what I did the other day, and everybody loved it. So it's very easy. And
so basically just heavy whipping cream.
Yeah, that's
sugar.
Heavy whipping cream and sugar because you're using it as a dessert.
Right, but you don't need an egg then. You don't need an egg with it.
Or do you? Just one ingredient and then the sugar, or a little flavor.
Or a little lemon zest or lemon juice. Right.
Lemon, if you
like
have
a little
lemon zest, that would be good.
Yeah.
Lemon extract would be probably even better because you don't want to put a lot of lemon juice in there because it might curdle your cream. I've done it, but you have to be careful. So I think lemon zest would be good. I mean, I got a lemon. I could have done that, but I didn't. I just used the bottled stuff. But cooking should be fun. You're not going to really mess stuff up too much. I mean, every once in a while you may have a disaster, but really, you're probably not. You're use your brain, and you'll be fine. And I've got to now I've got to go see if I can find somebody to eat this.
Rajee, do you have a question, or Mick, do you have a question for La?
I just gotta say, La, you got my mouth watering. That sounds absolutely delicious.
Thank you.
I mean, it sounds so good, and I love blueberries. Oh,
Yes,
and I can imagine like the crust, and
yeah,
it coming
the crust,
out.
it gets hard.
Oh.
The butter makes it kind of hard, and it's really good, and it's not over the top like bad for you because blueberries are really good for you. So you're kind of balancing out the sugar and the cream, a little bit. But Mick is eating this. What do you think about it, Mick?
I mean, it's fantastic. It's good with ice cream. I think it's also, it's good. It's good hot, as you had pointed out, but I know that it's also just as good on like a really hot day. You could have it cold.
Ooh,
And
yeah.
it's very simple. It's very easy. And I think in the grand scheme of desserts that you can eat, it's definitely a lot less processed than maybe something like certain types of cereal or maybe more extravagant types of ice cream.
Sure. And you don't have to put in a full cup of sugar. You could put in 3/4 or a half a cup. It won't be as sweet, but you can make it healthier.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So due to popular demand by people like Mick, I am writing a cookbook.
Ooh.
Because certain people who have eaten a lot of my cooking said, oh, well, now we don't live there anymore. And how do we make that? And, like I said before, it's not like I know all the answers or anything like that, but I do like to share what I know. And I have a lot of recipes I've made for a long time that I feel are easy and still delicious. And, spread the love. That's what I'm doing.
I can attest. It's all very, very good.
Over to you, Mick, with the music update. Thank you so much, La. I cannot wait to taste the what was it next week?
Next week is peach cobbler.
Well, you're gonna have to ship some of that to me.
I know, and it's similar to a blueberry crumble, but you know we're gonna go with it because they're really in season now. And then we'll get to some main dishes in the future. But I want to hear what Mick has to say about music because I love his picks.
Oh, well, thank you for that. Although this week I'm not doing a picks this week specifically. What I wanted to talk about this week is pretty pertinent to what's going on in general with people's concerns about government support and unemployment benefits running out in the next few weeks. As that type of support ends, and if you guys remember the PPP loans, which were for small businesses to kind of support them through the initial issues of the pandemic and giving people a little bit of time to maybe land on their feet. One specific set of small businesses that are going to be affected by this and really can't make up any differences for right now are live music venues. Now, there is an association of independent venues across the country with members in, I think, almost all 50 states, maybe give or take a few, but it's called the National Independent Venue Association. They're also, or otherwise known as NIVA. If you go on their website, it's called www.nivasoc.org. That's NIVASSOC.org. And you can go on there and they have a list of their members. So if you want to look up your neighborhood, say you live out here in Los Angeles, you'll see that venues like the Viper Room, the Regent Theater, the Troubadour, and Junior High Los Angeles are just some of the very many independent venues out here in California that are at risk of closure if they are not given support. There was an article in NPR last month where they took a survey of people within this group asking them how they plan to survive all of this, and 90% of them said that in the next few months, if more drastic measures are not taken, these venues are going to close. Many venues have already closed in places like Boston, New York, Los Angeles. Actually, just recently, what got me thinking about this was that one of my favorite venues out here, it's called the Satellite in Silver Lake. They were a venue space. They're actually going to convert to a restaurant right now because that's more lucrative for them to stay open than if they were a concert venue. So that's just here in Los Angeles. If you're in the Fort Lauderdale area like you guys are at, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with some of these venues, but the Jazz Lounge and the Culture Room, which are both located down near you guys, along with the two other venues. I believe the other one is the Broward Community Center for Arts. They're all a part of this. They're all a part of NIVA as well. If you're also listening from Cleveland, places like Happy Dog, the Grog Shop, and the Beachland Ballroom are also a part of NIVA. So one thing that you can do if you're especially interested in supporting them, you can go onto their website. They have a take action section where you can submit an email on behalf of NIVA to your legislators to let them know that you want them to consider legislation that will support independent venues during this time when they can't stay open. And the reason you definitely want to have independent venues is because organizations like Golden Voice AEG, which for those who aren't familiar, they own very, very, very many of the performance venues out here in California and really all across the United States. They're also the company that puts on Coachella. If independent owners don't own these places, then it's going to be massive corporations like AEG and Golden Voice who are putting on your favorite artists are going to be playing at places called like the Viacom Amazon Golden Voice Arena. You're not going to have the Grog Shop anymore. You're not going to have the Troubadour. You're going to have places that are named after brands. You're going to have the Starbucks Pavilion. It's not going to be the Merriweather Post Pavilion anymore. So you definitely want to be supporting. You definitely want to be supporting this information or this organization. They take donations as well. And also, if you just happen to live in an area where you know that there's a venue that you love that's independent, maybe look up their website or look up their Twitter page and see if they have a Patreon you can, well, maybe not a Patreon, but if they have a GoFundMe that you can donate to, if there are ways that you can perhaps donate to them or raise awareness for them, if they have a petition going around through the city to save the venue. These are things that one should be doing, because I've personally had some of the best concert experiences of my life at independent venues. And when these venues go under, everybody suffers. Independent venues are places where a lot of acts who aren't established and who don't have that star power to sell out maybe a larger, more corporate-owned venue. That's where they get their start, and that's how they get the chance to perform on larger stages and get to a larger audience. And that's how you learn about new music, because more people are seeing this act. So it really is a win-win for the consumer to have independent venues alive and running. So definitely, like I said, check out NIVA, that is the National Independent Venue Association, and their website is nivasoc.org. That is www.nivasoc.org. Highly recommend you checking them out, and also just finding out which venues in your neighborhood might be at risk of going under, because the satellite news really caught me off guard. So do what you can to save your local venues. I'm going to pass it over to Rajee now for the trans update, though, portion of the show.
Yes. So, well, in the beginning of the show, I mentioned about Bree Black, who is a young trans woman of color who was murdered a few weeks ago. And so I got good news from Joseph before the show started that Crime Stoppers has now, or is now, offering a reward of $3,000 for any information that leads to her murderer. So, that's really something, as a transgender woman of color myself, it's something that means so much to me, because there was a time when trans women were being murdered and people really didn't care. The police didn't really care. They didn't do the investigative work that should have been done. And so now, fast forward to 2020, starting to see people be more aware of our community and more concerned with our civil rights and with situations like the murder of Bree Black. So you see a picture of her. She was really young. And, I can't help to think about someone losing their life at that young age. I have a friend that I grew up with, and he died at 21, beautiful dancer, gay man, and he died at 21 years of age. We were the same age. I was 21. And at that time, I thought, and I'm sure he thought, that we had lived so much life. But I think about him from time to time, and I think about all the life that I've lived since then. And so when I hear someone like Bree Black losing her life so young, I just think of, like, wow, a life, what could have been, a life that could have been, and the possibilities that she had for her life. And unfortunately, she's been was snubbed out. So anyway, Joseph, I don't know if you want to add to that, because I know you're our research guy, so maybe you have some other information.
Actually, yes, I do, and I just want to put it up again because I don't know if when I share a photo, if everyone sees it or how it actually works out. So I do want to share the photo, and I will read information also as well, and then I will go to my information for the COVID update. So it's deputies are still looking for those responsible for what relatives called the cold-blooded killing of a transgender woman in Pompano Beach. A detective with the Broward Sheriff's Office said there were people in the area that night before the 4th of July that may have seen something. Now there is a $3,000 reward for any of those details that could lead to an arrest. Cameron Breon Spencer, Bree Black, was shot on Friday, July 3rd outside of her apartment. Broward Sheriff's Office deputies responded to the call around 10:18 p.m. of a shooting at 244 Northwest 12th Street. That's 244 Northwest 12th Street. When they arrived, they found the victim on the ground, suffering from a gunshot wound. Fire rescue responded to the scene where the 27-year-old victim was pronounced dead at 10:28 p.m. Detectives do not believe that the victim, a transgender female, who was also known as Nook, was not targeted because of her sexuality, but they always say that kind of stuff whenever it comes up to us, to be honest with you. It's very aggravating and upsetting. Upon police arrival, there were hundreds of bystanders in the roadway. Sergeant Brian Tutler with the Broward Sheriff's Office Homicide Unit said, quote unquote, "I can't say they were all there when it happened, but it's a very crowded area. And I bet there are eyewitnesses who were there who can come forward to give us an account of what they really saw," end of quote. Family members told Local 10 News that a dispute or fight may have led up to the gunfire. But so far, BSO is not confirming that information, saying the case is still under investigation. Anyone with information about the shooting is asked to contact BSO homicide detectives at 954-321-4377. That's 954-321-4377. Crime Stoppers will pay up to $3,000 for information that leads to solving the case. The phone number, once again, is 954-493-8477. So there's two different numbers. Crime Stoppers is 954-493-8477. They're the ones who are offering the $3,000 for information. Homicide detectives from BSO are 954-321-4377. Mick, if you have anything to say or not, it's okay if you want to chime in. Otherwise, I will go directly into the COVID dates and updates and my focus for my little segment. I'm just going to go over the numbers. It's really scary. It's really crazy. It's crazy for you out there in California. It's crazy for us here in Fort Lauderdale, I should say Florida. And based off of our numbers and your numbers, our numbers are probably going to surpass yours once we get our testing equivalent to yours. So you guys already have almost 6 million tests. That's why you have 7,227 people that have died and 347,634 people that tested positive. Here in Florida, we're only at 2,735,000 tests. Out of those, 4,626 people have died. And out of those tests, 301,810 have tested positive. And actually, Laura, we are concerned about you. I should say in Ohio, you have had about 1 million tests done. Out of those 1 million tests, 69,000 of them have tested positive, and you have had over 3,075 deaths in Ohio. Those are some really harsh numbers. They're continuing to escalate, and I'm going to try to do whatever I can to keep this in the focus. It's one of those things where I don't know what to do. So the only thing that I could think of is to highlight and showcase actual people's photos and their stories. Every week, I'm going to focus on somebody, and then I'm going to read 10 names. And then maybe we might change it later to more names because I think that it's necessary. So this is a somber moment, but I feel that it's necessary. I want to start off with the very first person who died from COVID here in Florida, Jermaine Farrow, March 5th is the date of death. Vernon Richards, March 6th is the date of death. Loretta Dionisio, March 10th is the date of death. Mark Greenberg, March 14th is the date of death. John Ness, March 14th, the date of death. Joanne Steinhauer, March 15th, the date of death. Richard Curran, March 17th, the date of death. Alfred Lowitt, March 17th, the date of death. Kathy Dunwoody, March 17th, the date of death. And Richard Albero, March 17th, the date of death. I'm going to get better at doing this. It's hard to read the names emotionally, and it's also hard to read the names because I don't know these individuals, but I think it's important that we acknowledge them. it's not being done yet so far, and I feel that it's necessary. So it's just something that makes me feel a little better, and hopefully for those family members, if this message gets across to them, at least they know that somebody, that we paid attention to them, and hopefully 6,000 people or so who see this message will also take the moment to pay attention to those people who passed. And we can try to look forward to things getting better, but we cannot forget about what has already happened. That is my segment. It's a little bit hard to talk about that topic. I don't know if any of you want to add anything to it, but that's the only thing that I can think of to do. And there's so many names just for Florida at this point, and it's just going to continue to grow. Rajee, what do you got to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment about you reading the names. You know, we hear numbers, they're just really numbers. But when you actually hear the names of the people, it really, I think it personalizes it, and it really brings home that these were people that were living their lives, and they had plans for, you know, the next day and next year, and you know, these are people that had families that loved them. And so, you know, numbers are one thing. You know, you hear, oh, you know, 3,000 people died. I'm just throwing a number out. But when you start hearing the names, oh my God, it really brings it home. It really, really, really does. And so that was powerful. And that's all I want to say.
Yeah, I think also what's helpful about personal, well, maybe not, I guess, yeah, you could say personalizing it, but really humanizing this tragedy is a good way to maybe make people just kind of see how callously we've dismissed it so far. I think that a lot of us, even myself included, at the very, 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 very beginning of all of this, and like the early stages of the year around January or February, I'll admit, like, I wasn't necessarily like, I was definitely worried about things happening, and I knew that this disease was obviously affecting a lot of different people. But the way that it was presented is people were saying like, oh, it's just the flu. It's like, it's just the flu. It's just the flu. And if you look back on the past 20 something years, like, and not that I've personally lived through any pandemics, but you hear different types of things on the news, like there's going to be the bird flu, or if anyone remembers, swine flu, SARS, West Nile virus. And luckily, where I've happened to have lived, like over like the course of those incidents, like I lived in relatively safe places where I was blessed and lucky enough to not have myself or anyone that I know really affected by those diseases. And so I thought, like, and I think a lot of people unfortunately are still thinking this way, is they're thinking like, oh, it's just like, it's not a big deal, it's going to be okay. And like, I think at this point, if you're not really like really reassessing the way that you're looking at this disease and everything that's happening right now, and you're not thinking about the very real like toll that this is having on not just people who are being killed, but the people who are related to them, who are close to these people, who now like have their entire lives uprooted by something that people just aren't taking seriously. And like I said, in the very, very, very beginning of all of this, like I didn't have all the facts, and like I made some assumptions about this that I'm not, like, that I can admit were wrong. Like, and I think that that's another thing, people need to admit when they're maybe wrong about something. It's gotten to this point where in our culture, if someone does something wrong, it's just, and obviously it's depending on like what you do that's wrong, but if someone makes a mistake, an honest mistake, that people will oftentimes just like act like that is the be all end all. And it's like, people do make mistakes, people do mess things up. And I think it's important for people to realize when they've made a mistake and think like, okay, I messed up. Like, I'm not going to continue thinking this way about this disease that has impacted and destroyed and devastated so many people's lives. But I think that that's also just something that people just need to do on a more personal level and just really think about what is going on here and maybe consider for a second that this isn't a political issue, that this isn't something that's being manufactured. It's very, very much an ongoing tragedy, and people should start treating it like one. So.
Thank you, Mick. Thank you, Rajee. Laura, if you have anything to add, you can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, I want to, yes, you're reaching. Are you get yes
Well,
to say?
I can just add to it that, you know, a lot of people still don't know anybody who's been affected by it personally. But I know that my daughter, who her boyfriend that she lives with, he's an emergency room nurse. And yesterday he had to work late. I mean, they've been very busy here in Ohio. Cuyahoga County is like purple. It's not even red. It's worse, you know. A friend of my sister's, he actually owns a pretty popular microbrewery here. He's in the hospital. He's only 62, which may sound old to some of you, but not really that old. I heard that, you know, young children are getting it. There was a editorial written by a teacher in today's New York Times about how she's not going to go back to school. She goes, I'm not going to take a bullet and maybe spread this to my family because the government is not going to, they're going to tell us to go back to work or go back to school, but they're not. You know, the GOP aren't going to go to the convention. You know, Barron Trump is supposedly not going to be going back to school. So it's like an elite class who, you know, they feel safe. They can be tested every day. But people here are having difficulty getting in to get a test. And, you know, kind of shame on the USA. But we're better than this. But the problem is that the government that's in the leadership, I say that with quotes, the leadership role right now, are not leaders. And there's a lot of sheep. And I mean, I email my congressman and my governor all the time. And it gets frustrating because I get back these rote responses that don't even answer what my concerns are. But let them all know that I vote, and a lot of people I know vote, and hopefully we don't have to do more than vote to get them out of their offices. Hopefully they don't try to pull some sort of crazy treachery, because that's even another scary thing. So there's a lot of fear, but I always want to tell people you really have to choose to, you know, have some optimism and stuff, because it's too easy to fall down that rabbit hole. So that's my 2 cents worth. And I am sitting here eating blueberry crumble because nobody in my house, they're looking at me like, I'm like, oh, please. This is the danger of having a cooking show. Have to eat it.
I want them.
I know, right?
I wish you could hand it through the screen. Here, Raj, and you could just say, okay.
Oh,
You would love it.
We would both be fighting for it. And just to reiterate back to that point, and then it's closing time at the OK Corral. Mick has a very important Zoom date later for someone's birthday, and we want to make certain that he makes it on time. We don't want to make him fashionably late. But to talk about what you had just mentioned, though, Laura, is that when these numbers, and also Mick, is that when these numbers first came out, they told us it was elderly people and young people couldn't get it and everything else, and it's a whole bunch of bupkis. I go to the Florida Community Coronavirus Dashboard. That's the lady who got fired from Ron, I won't say the word that I want to, the governor of Florida. He fired her because she would not change the numbers to make them look better so that they could reopen sooner. So it kind of delayed our reopening. But I go to her numbers every single day, and I wrote down some not kind of interesting things, some things that are startling and things that people need to be aware of. And that's the reason why I read those names. And I'm going to try to probably pull one of the some photos or do some research on each one of each of the 10 every time that I do it, but the number one here in Florida age group who have COVID that are being tested is 25 to 34 years of age. That's the number one. Number two, 35 to 44. Number three, this is gonna put a craw in everybody, 15 to 24. So from 15 to 44 are the top three that are getting COVID.
Wow.
So it's not just an old person thing. That's my point. And the numbers for the over 65 are the lowest. And the infant numbers are bigger than the elderly at this point now here in Florida. So it's not what they told us, that it's old people are getting it. Don't worry about it. Just go out there, go to work, do whatever you're going to do and everything else. So part of the whole reason of how this show even started is because of being stuck at home and me trying to figure out what to do because I'm going stir crazy. Not stir crazy, but I just got a lot of energy and a lot of thoughts in my head. And it's good for me to get them out once a week. And I thank all of you, Mick and Rajee and Laura and Marty, who popped in earlier, and Carlita and everyone else that's part of the show. And my partner, because I drive him nuts. I'm on the phone all the time talking to all of you and doing emails. And my dog is sleeping underneath my feet right now. But I want to tell people about how to get a hold of us if you are interested in becoming part of the MySouthernExposure.site, our web show, our web series. We're continuing to improve everything on a regular basis. We have over 6,000 views for the last week. We have over 32,000 views for all of our 8 shows. We're continuing to improve everything on a regular basis. And we have some great ad rates. If you're interested in having Mick or Rajee or me or anyone else that's part of the team be able to help represent your company. If you have a company and you want to try to continue to operate safely, we want to help you help your employees and help your company continue to make it through this stress-filled time. If it's possible for us to do that, we want to help you. If you have someone who makes underwear at home in their garage, let us know. If you have someone,
How'd you know I was doing that?
oh, not you, Laura. I was talking about one of Rajee's friends. If we can get Aldi, that would be absolutely fabulous.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
if there's some music group out there where they can teach people how to play guitar or play piano safely from their home while the kids are at home. If there's someone who has a school or any kind of thing like that where people can be safe at home and we can help them make money and also help people who are at home, we have the great vehicle for you, MySouthernExposure.site. That's www.MySouthernExposure.site. If you want to get a hold of Rajee, she will tell you how to get a hold of her and also say goodbye for the night, and you can round back to me.
Sure. Well, anyone that wants to get a hold of me, it's Rajee at MySouthernExposure.site. That's Rajee at MySouthernExposure.site. And I just want to thank everyone that's been, watching our show from week to week. And, love to hear more of your comments. If you have any suggestions for topics that you'd like to hear us discuss, by all means, leave it in the comment area. And so anyway, looking forward to next week and our juicy conversation. Mick.
Thanks, Rajee. And my email is very similar to Rajee's, except it is Mick at MySouthernExposure.site. Again, that is MICK at MySouthernExposure.site. Would love to hear any input from you guys about topics that we should be discussing. If there's anyone that you want us to give a shout out to, if there's anything that you disagree with. I mean, this is a conversation between all of us and we don't always agree. So we want to hear what you have to say, and we want to open up different avenues of conversation and open up different ways of thinking, because this whole set of current events is about more than just getting through it. It's about us trying to examine different ways of thinking. So I'm going to pass that over to La now, because she also has an email that you can reach her at if you have recipe information or other food type stuff. So La?
Yep, La or Laura, Laura, at mysouthernexposure.site. That is me. And I did say I'd be here next week with Peach Cobbler, but my band, the Pop Tarts, I forgot we have a gig next Sunday night. I did tell Joseph that. So we may record my segment or we'll do it the following Sunday. But Laura at mysouthernexposure.site. Don't ignore me. Write to me. All right, Joe.
Thank you, Laura. And how can anyone ignore you? First of all, I mean, all joking aside, if it wasn't for your egging me on, I never would have been on that other show. And I never would have even thought about doing this one. So, and you are the executive producer, so you can do whatever you want to do whenever you want to do it. So.
That's right. You're our law.
La-di-da.
Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you so much, Rajee. Thank you so much, Mick. And thank you at home for watching us. We look forward to seeing you next week. And we all hope that you have a great week and try to be safe out there because it's a little stressful and trying, but try to look for something that's going to be uplifting. Try to make someone laugh. I mean, when we take our bike rides every morning, I say good morning to everybody, every single person. As I ride past them, I say good morning. And my partner laughs because of the faces that they make. Some people are happy and then they say good morning, and some people are like, they act like they can't hear me, which is absolutely hysterical. But try to make someone smile. I mean, that's my suggestion, is try to make someone smile and say good morning to somebody or say good afternoon or hold open a door for somebody so they don't have to touch the door. But make sure to put on a freaking mask. I mean, seriously, just put on a freaking mask.
Woo.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week, everybody.
Love, peace, and blessings.
Bye. Cheers.
Cheers. All right, I think I hit the stop button, Laura. Are you still there?
Hi.